It's a question that's haunted us for decades. How does a modern, cultured, and educated nation just fall into total darkness? How does it become a willing party to some of the worst crimes in all of human history? Today, we're going to try and answer that. And the story starts not on some grand battlefield, but inside the mind of a terrified little boy. Okay, so picture this. It's the spring of 1945. The war in Europe is over. Germany has lost. And there's an 11-year-old boy named Helmut, lying in his bed, listening to his parents talking in these low, serious voices. His father was a well-known doctor and a devoted Nazi. And what he's debating with his wife is just chilling. He's talking about whether they should kill the entire family or if he should just kill himself. And it all comes down to this deep, gnawing fear of revenge. And in the middle of it all, he says these words that Helmuth, the boy, would never, ever forget. And what happened next was just brutal and fast. The family had one last happy day together, and then his father went into his office and shot himself. Helmuth remembers seeing his dad's bloody uniform being burned in their fireplace. I mean, can you even imagine the trauma? It was so bad that for the next 9 years, the boy refused to eat anything at home because he was terrified his own mother would poison him. So that's the real question, isn't it? What on earth could create that level of guilt, that level of fear in a respected doctor, a father? What could push him to believe that this was his only way out? Well, to answer that, we have to understand the world that made him. We've got to go back to the beginning. All right, so to get to the bottom of that, we have to rewind the clock. Way back. We're going to the end of the First World War. Germany's been defeated, the Kaiser has fled the country, and this new, very fragile democracy is born. It's called the Weimar Republic. But see, this new republic was basically born with its hands tied behind its back. It was saddled with this thing called the Treaty of Versailles. And for a lot of Germans, this wasn't a peace treaty. It felt like a national humiliation. I mean, think about it. Germany lost 13% of its land, 10% of its people, huge amounts of its iron and coal resources, its military was gutted, and on top of all that, it was forced to pay these absolutely crippling war reparations. The politicians who signed it were called the November criminals. They were seen as traitors. And that national humiliation, that was just the opening act. The hits just kept on coming for this new democracy. It was like a cascade of crises, one right after the other. First the treaty, then a crazy economic collapse, and then, just when it looked like things might be getting better, the Wall Street crash happens, and it throws the whole country right back into total chaos. And when we talk about hyperinflation, I want you to understand, this isn't some abstract economic term. This was real life. This was your entire life savings turning into worthless paper literally overnight. It meant you needed a wheelbarrow, an actual wheelbarrow full of cash just to go and buy a loaf of bread. Then, after that brief recovery, bam, the Great Depression hits. And by 1932, this one number pretty much defined all of Germany. 6 million. That's how many people were unemployed. They were desperate. You'd see them on the streets with signs that just said, willing to do any work. It's no wonder they were losing all faith in democracy. It just wasn't working for them. So you've got this perfect storm, right? Humiliation, desperation, complete chaos. And in a situation like that, people aren't looking for nuanced policy discussions. They're looking for a savior. They're looking for simple answers. And right on cue, here comes Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And they have a message that is simple, it's powerful, and man, is it seductive. It was like they had an answer for every single fear people had. They promised to build a strong nation, to undo the treaty, to restore German dignity, to give people jobs, and to weed out anyone they considered a foreign influence. And the results? They were just staggering. I mean, look at this. In 1928, before the Depression really kicked in, the Nazis were basically a nobody party. They got just 2.6% of the vote. Fast forward only 4 years to 1932, and they're the single largest party in Germany. It was a political earthquake. Now, this next part is so important to understand. The Nazis didn't storm the Capitol in some violent coup. No, they were given power. Hitler was appointed chancellor legally, and then he used the system itself to tear the whole thing down from the inside. And the speed at which he did it is just mind-blowing. First, a mysterious fire breaks out in the Parliament building, and boom, that's the excuse to just suspend basic rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press.
Next, he gets a law passed called the Enabling Act, which basically lets him rule by himself. No parliament needed. Just like that, democracy was over. Within months, all other political parties were banned, and the state had total control of everything. So once they had that absolute, iron-fisted control, the Nazis could finally start building their new Germany. But this wasn't a vision built on politics as we know it. It was built on a radical and, frankly, deadly ideology.
So, at the very heart of this whole ideology was this really twisted, completely unscientific idea about race. It was a hierarchy. You had the desirables at the very top, the so-called pure Nordic German Aryans. And then, then you had everyone else, the undesirables. They were seen as inferior or even subhuman. This included groups like Jews, Gypsies, Black people, Slavs, the disabled, with Jewish people right at the very bottom, painted as the ultimate enemy.
And this whole racist worldview, it wasn't just about controlling Germany. Oh no. It had a huge geopolitical goal, and it's all captured in this one German word, Lebensraum. It literally means living space. The idea was that the superior Aryan race needed more room and had the right to expand eastward, conquering new lands and either enslaving or just eliminating the people already living there.
And this is where it all comes full circle, back to Helmut's father. This ideology, it wasn't some abstract concept in a book. It was a literal blueprint for mass murder. It's what led directly to the Holocaust, the systematic industrial-scale murder of 6 million Jewish people and millions of others. These were the crimes against humanity that he knew the world was about to discover. Which, of course, brings us to maybe the most difficult question of all. This wasn't happening in some secret bunker. This was happening out in the open, in cities and towns. So where was everybody else? Why didn't more people do something? Well, the truth is, there wasn't just one single reaction. You had some people who became die-hard, fanatical Nazis, who genuinely thought this was the path to a better future. Then you had this incredibly small, incredibly brave minority who fought back, who resisted, and often died for it. But the vast, vast majority, they were just passive onlookers, people who were too scared to speak up, who found it easier to just look the other way. There was a pastor, Martin Niemöller, who at first actually supported the Nazis. He later became a resistance fighter, and he captured the terrifying danger of this silence with words that honestly should give us all chills even today. It's a powerful warning about what happens when good people stay quiet.
And that's where we have to end it. Not with a neat and tidy answer, but with this same question that this history just forces us to confront. It's a question about the past for sure. But man, it is absolutely a question for right now too. What does it take for ordinary people, for good people, to just look away?